It looks a little bit dark. Who knows? Yeah, so, hello, friends on the internet. Today we're fiddly farting around with a little bit of new technology. We got myself a little lapel mic in the hopes of being able to take this show on the road and find some nicer variety of background. Not just stand here ranting in my room, but take advantage of the wonderful natural scenery afforded to me, and for that matter, artificial scenery afforded to me in the lovely city that I live in. Just because I get bored of editing something that looks the same every time, really. So hopefully that'll be happening in the future. But today we're testing, and we're going to test by going off on a little tear about just a small idea that I think is really important to being a human in the world, right? Trying to find sort of peace of mind amidst the chaos that sort of hits our modern reality quite a lot, which is that the idea is that we can live in what I like to think of as a dystopia in aggregate, where the interaction of a bunch of sort of marginally unfortunate decisions can lead to a really, really unfortunate overall outcome. And because of our tendency to attribute bad outcomes to bad actors and to attribute sort of pain with malice, we can build up a picture of a world that is really sort of more frightening, more upsetting than it needs to be. Because much of the unfortunateness that's going on in the world is actually unintended. Now, I hasten to make sure not to overstate this. There are bad actors in the world. There are some right jerks out there, and we have to acknowledge that, but we also have to acknowledge that a lot of sort of the smaller scale stuff that we encounter is not intentional. It's the result of people either acting in haste, acting with incomplete information, or a mistaken understanding of how the world works, and you can end up with a lot of well-intentioned decisions coming together to make a really unpleasant life experience. The distance between what we intend and what we affect can be very large at times. And if we don't keep that in mind, and if we don't extend charity to others in the interpretation of their behaviors and the chain of events that led to whatever unfortunate consequence we may happen to be living, we can end up with a very bleak picture of the world, a world that is sort of not worth having a lot of hope about. We're in a time that, sometimes it can feel pretty darn hopeless. Looking out upon our fellow human beings and seeing the sorts of choices they're making and actions they're undertaking. But while many people may be bad actors, also many people who produce unfortunate consequences in their mind they are trying to do the right thing. And if we engage them on that level and take the time to understand how it is that they came to produce an unfortunate consequence when they desired something different, we end up with a much sort of more optimistic picture of the world. Yes, some people are turds, but a lot of people are just mistaken. And that's really something that I talked about a while back when I was on a whole Bayesian jag, was this idea of protecting your priors, right? Like, you have to come to an understanding of how the world works and what sort of actors are out there. And because of our cognitive bias to attribute anything to, a malicious actor, you walk down the hallway and you stub your toe on the floorboard, and that first gut instinct is, that tried to get me, and then we have to intellectually go like, actually, no, it's an inanimate object, probably I wasn't paying attention. But there is a strong human bias towards attributing any outcome to intent and bad outcomes to malice, and we have to be mindful of that, lest we live in a world that is very frightening indeed. So that's that. Just something to be on the lookout for, something that can definitely contribute to your overall well-being, because if you live in a world that is, well, we live in a world that is hard, but if you're living in a world that appears harder than the hard world that we actually live in, you're really going to have a bad time. So keep in mind, intent and effect sometimes very far apart, and a lot of the unfortunate effects in the world were not what the person who caused them to come to be desired. And a lot of the unfortunate effects in the world are actually the result of sort of the interaction of a bunch of suboptimal decisions producing a really bad outcome. And if you give people the credit to like actually look at how they came to behave in the way that they did and what exactly they did, what you realize is that they're not necessarily bad people, and they may not have even done a bad thing. It just may be that they didn't have a complete enough picture to understand that the interaction of myriad sub-optimalities can be pure awful. And then there are just people out there being pure awful. But we have to keep the full picture in perspective, and have a clear and accurate understanding of the world as it is if we want to act within it in a way that's consistent with being happy human beings.